It wasn't the champagne that burned. It was the applause. I was halfway through my second sip when she said it, loud enough for everyone to hear, soft enough to pretend it was a joke. Bethany once tried to start her own company. Lemonade, right? Something like that. Then came the laughter. The kind that stings more when it comes from people who call themselves family. I didn't say anything. Just stared at the bubbles in my glass like they were going to rise up and carry me out of that room. The fork in my hand shook. Just slightly. Not enough to notice unless you were looking for it. And no one was. Have you ever been the punchline in a story you never agreed to be in? Ever smiled so hard your jaw hurt? Just to keep from crying in front of people who wouldn't even care if you did? Because that was me. Stuck in a chair I never asked to sit in, listening to my own sister turn my life into a dinner joke. And the worst part? I didn't leave. Not yet. Before you scroll. Have you ever stayed quiet? Not because you were weak, but because you were planning something better? If you've ever swallowed pain with a smile, this story's for you. Make sure you stick around, hit subscribe, and drop a comment if someone's ever laughed while stepping on your name. Because sometimes, the softest people carry the sharpest pens. The dinner was Harriet's idea. Her big promotion party, she called it. Nothing fancy, just a backyard setup at our parents' place. String lights, a rented heater, linen napkins no one needed. Everyone brought something. Harriet brought her new title, Director of Client Strategy. I brought deviled eggs. You ever walk into a room and feel like everyone's already decided who you are before you even sit down? That was me, every time. I could have worn a crown, and they'd still only see the little sister who once flunked algebra and cried over a boy in 10th grade. Harriet's the golden one. Always has been. The kind who gets standing ovations just for showing up. She knows how to work a room, all charm, all timing. And me? I've always been more of a behind-the-scenes kind of person. I help, I support, I fade in. It used to feel like love. Now I wonder if it was just convenience. The table was long, like something out of a catalog, mismatched chairs, candles flickering in recycled wine bottles. There was a whole production laid out, like we were filming some low-budget family commercial. Tammy McLean kept asking me what I was doing these days. She asked 3 different times. I guess she was hoping I'd change the answer. Unemployed, again. Or as Harriet likes to phrase it, taking a breather. I didn't say much. Just helped pass the food, smiled when someone brought up memories I'd rather forget. They laughed about the time I locked myself in the bathroom during Harriet's Sweet 16. How I always had a flair for the dramatic. I let it slide, all of it. Because if you stop them every time they minimize you, you'll never finish a meal. But the energy shifted when Raymond Blackwell showed up, Harriet's boss. He was late, overdressed, and looking mildly bored. When Harriet introduced us, her hand barely brushed my shoulder. "This is my sister, Bethany," she said, like I was just background. I shook his hand. He looked at me like he was trying to place me, like something about me didn't quite match the script Harriet had written. He smiled, polite but puzzled. And I tucked that moment away, like a spark I wasn't sure what to do with yet. That night, under string lights and half-sincere laughter, something inside me shifted. I wasn't angry yet, but I was tired, and sometimes tired is all it takes to start a fire. It started with the clinking of silverware on glass. Harriet stood up, her wine glass raised high like she was accepting a crown. Everyone got quiet. Even the kids were hushed, bribed by sparkling cider and the promise of dessert. She cleared her throat dramatically. She always did this thing where she paused just long enough to make sure all eyes were on her. And they were. Always. "First," she said, smiling so wide it looked painful, "thank you all for being here to celebrate the best week of my life." Laughter. Applause. Raymond leaned back in his chair, arms folded, amused, detached. She continued, "You know, moving up to director wasn't easy. I've been through a lot, long nights, failed ideas, that one disastrous pitch in Chicago." She laughed. Others joined in, not knowing what they were laughing at. Then her tone shifted, just enough. And, of course, I had a lot of inspiration growing up, like my little sister Bethany. She looked at me, then back at the table, like she couldn't even be bothered to hold eye contact through it. Bethany once started a company selling eco-friendly planners and called it MindKind. A few people chuckled. Tammy covered her mouth. Harriet kept going. Let's just say it was more of a Pinterest board than a business. There it was. The line. It hit the room like perfume in an elevator, strong, lingering, and impossible to ignore. The table burst out laughing. Someone actually clapped. Even Raymond smirked. And me? I stared at my plate, not in shame, in shock. Like I had just watched someone walk into my house and start taking pictures of my unmade bed. Harriet sat back down, giggling like it was all harmless fun. She poured herself more wine, leaned over to Joe Olson, one of our old neighbors, and whispered something that made him spit laugh. She didn't care that I heard. She wanted me to hear. That was the thing. It wasn't just a dig, it was a message. Stay in your place. But something strange happened in that silence. In the hollow space left after the laughter died down. I didn't feel small, I felt sharp. Like something inside me had cracked, but not in a way that broke me. Raymond caught my eye again. There was something different in his look this time, a flicker of recognition, like a light bulb had flickered somewhere in the back of his mind. He tilted his head slightly, almost like a question. But he didn't say anything. Not yet. I forced a smile, took another sip, and made a decision. She could laugh now, but I wasn't going to be her silence anymore. I smiled through dessert. That's the part that haunts me the most, not the joke, not the laughter, not even the smirk on Harriet's face. It was the way I stayed. Sat there, ate pie, nodded like I wasn't choking on it. It tasted like sugar and shame. Too sweet, too fake. People kept talking about work, the weather, some new French bakery that opened up on 6th, and I just floated in it, like driftwood in a conversation I didn't belong to. Every few minutes, someone would nudge me with a comment meant to be comforting. You know, she's just teasing. Harriet's always been like that. She doesn't mean anything by it. She's proud of you deep down. That's the thing about deep down. If you have to dig that far to find the good in someone, maybe it's just not there. Later, when most people had gone home and the chairs were stacked against the fence, I helped gather plates in the kitchen. Judy Hammond was drying glasses at the sink. She's known our family since we were kids. She looked over at me and said real soft, "You handled that with grace." I nodded, but inside something different was blooming. Not anger, not yet. It was clarity, that quiet kind. The kind that doesn't raise its voice but still fills the whole room. I remembered something Harriet once said, years ago. We were both still in college. She had just been dumped and showed up at my apartment crying, mascara smudged and phone in hand. I made her tea, let her cry into my hoodie, and when she finally spoke she said, "You're like a warm bath. Easy to sink into, but easy to forget you're even in." I laughed at the time, thought it was sweet. But now I hear it for what it was. She was never scared of me, because she never saw me coming. So that night I sat on my couch, wrapped in a fleece blanket with my laptop warming my thighs, and I opened up a blank document. Not for a resume, not a cover letter, something else. I typed Harriet's company name into Google, clicked through the links, found the client presentation she had posted on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, all polished and buzzword heavy, but sloppy underneath. Disconnected ideas, no backbone. I kept reading, line by line, and then I saw it. The same structural pitch style we used at my old job. The one I had shown her when she begged for help before her first big pitch. She hadn't just borrowed my words, she'd taken my whole spine and built her success around it. I wasn't surprised, just tired. Tired of being the safety net she bounced off of while pretending she got there on her own. Tired of being reduced to Pinterest and planners while she climbed ladders made of my work. But this time, I had something she didn't see coming. I had Raymond's email, and more than that, I had nothing left to lose, which, in my experience, is the most dangerous place for a quiet woman to be. 3 days passed. That's how long it took for my phone to buzz with an unfamiliar number and a message I didn't expect. "Hi, Bethany. This is Raymond Blackwell. Mind if I send something your way? Would love your eyes on it. Confidential. No pressure." I stared at it for a full minute, half wondering if it was a prank. Then I remembered the way he looked at me during dinner, that small head tilt, that pause, like he knew there was more to me than Harriet's party tricks let on. I typed back, "Sure. Send it." 2 minutes later, I had an email in my inbox with a PDF labeled, "Client Proposal, Revision Notes Requested." No attachments, no fancy intro, just a short note. Struggling with cohesion. Can't figure out what's missing. I think you can. I opened it out of curiosity. But the second I saw the first slide, I sat up straighter. The proposal was sloppy. Not just in structure, it felt wrong. Disconnected, like a speech written by someone trying too hard to sound impressive instead of making sense. Too many metaphors, too many ideas jammed together like bad roommates. And tucked in the footnotes of slide 4? Harriet's initials. This was her work, or at least what she wanted to pass off as hers. I should have felt some twisted sense of satisfaction, but what I actually felt was grief. Not loud grief, the kind that takes your breath and screams into the void. No. This was the quiet kind. The grief of knowing someone you love never once hesitated to use you as a rung on the ladder. I clicked reply. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I stopped. Closed the laptop. Instead, I made tea. Jasmine, my favorite, soft and fragrant, like the kind of peace I hadn't tasted in years. And while it steeped, I thought about the ways I'd made myself smaller for people who couldn't handle my full size. I thought about the time Harriet broke our parents' vase and blamed me. I took the fall. I thought about the internships I turned down so I could stay close to home and help her get through school. I thought about how she thanked me once, when we were 24, and never again. By the time my tea cooled, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I reopened the document, took out my notebook, not to edit, to rebuild. Quietly, cleanly, precisely. I didn't ask for credit, I didn't ask for permission, but I added something at the end. Just one line. A signature in italics, concept structure and proposal rebuild by B branch. I saved it, attached it, and hit send. 20 minutes later, Raymond replied, "Perfect, exactly what we needed. You're a damn natural. Mind if I loop you in next week for the client meeting? Won't take much, you don't even need to speak, just want your brain in the room." My hands shook. Not with nerves. With something else. Validation has a strange weight when it arrives after years of silence. It doesn't make you feel lighter. It makes you feel seen. That night, I stared at the ceiling fan spinning slow in the dark, wondering what Harriet would say if she knew, wondering if she'd recognize her own career in my handwriting. And the craziest part? I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. But sometimes, the path to peace walks straight through the middle of someone else's lie. It was the next morning, early. One of those soft, gray mornings where the sky looks like wet paper and nothing makes a sound. I hadn't slept much, not because I was anxious, but because my mind kept circling the same question. When did I start letting her talk about me like that? My phone buzzed with a group chat notification. Harriet had sent a selfie. Her in a blazer, coffee in hand, standing next to a glass-walled conference room. Monday face, crushing it already. A few of our cousins sent emojis. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Tammy. She answered on the third ring, voice still gravelly with sleep. "Beth, everything okay?" "Yeah, I just needed a real voice this morning." There was a pause, then the rustle of sheets. "What happened?" I told her about Raymond, about the proposal, about what I'd sent. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then, "You're finally doing it." "Doing what?" I asked. "Making her feel the edge of you." That line stuck. The edge of me. Like I'd been keeping it wrapped in cotton all these years. Tammy sighed, soft but knowing. "You know she's always needed you more than you needed her, right? She just got better at pretending otherwise." I stayed quiet. And then, maybe because it was still early, or maybe because I was tired of holding it all in, I said, "Do you remember when she lost her job at the firm in Philly? That year she was barely getting by?" "Of course I do. You covered half her rent." "She told everyone she got a scholarship, that she was freelancing." I paused. "She told Raymond she built her brand from scratch." Another silence. This one heavier. Tammy's voice dropped. "She doesn't lie to hurt you, Beth. She lies to keep being the version of herself she's proud of, and that version doesn't include needing her little sister." The words felt like a clean cut. Not cruel, just sharp truth. And maybe that was the hardest part. Harriet didn't see me as a person anymore, just a backdrop, the wallpaper to her spotlight. We hung up quietly, no big ending, just soft talk soon and the click of disconnection. Later that afternoon, I walked to the mailbox and pulled out a card. Cream envelope. Elegant handwriting. Harriet's. Inside was a thank you note. "Beth, thanks for coming to the dinner. Your eggs were a hit. You've always been the best at those little details." Love, H. No mention of the toast, no apology, just the same shallow charm she'd mastered years ago. I held the card in my hand for a long time, and I thought, maybe she really believed that was enough. Maybe she thought I'd just keep swallowing the scraps. Maybe she still thought I was that warm bath, easy to forget, easy to drown in. But things were different now. She didn't know it yet, but her story was starting to change, and this time, my name wouldn't be a footnote. That night, I turned off every light in the apartment, let the silence have the space. No music, no TV, just the hum of the fridge and the distant hush of passing cars. There's something about darkness that makes everything feel honest. You can't perform for yourself when you're sitting alone in the glow of a street lamp sneaking through the blinds. I lit a candle, not for the scent, just for the flicker. Watched it dance against the wall like it had something to say. I pulled out the old scrapbook, the one I hadn't touched in years. It lived in the back of my closet under scarves and sweaters I never wore, like a piece of myself I'd packed away for when I felt brave enough. Inside were photos, grainy prints from a phone camera that barely worked. Me and Harriet in college, sharing cheap tacos on the floor of our apartment. Me holding a whiteboard, the words Mind Kind Strategy Session Number 1, scribbled across it in blue marker. A handwritten checklist of dreams, each one written in my favorite purple ink. Start a consulting brand, speak at a women's conference, work with nonprofits, never lose yourself. I laughed when I saw that last one. Not because it was funny, but because I realized how quietly I'd let it happen. I didn't lose myself all at once. It happened in small ways, letting Harriet take credit for a sentence here, a structure there, letting her make jokes I never corrected, letting my silence become a kind of permission. And now here I was, the ghostwriter of her career. But maybe I wasn't just writing her story. Maybe I'd been writing my own ending too. I called Christy Douglas, someone I hadn't spoken to in almost a year. She used to work with me at the university, smart, kind, sharp as a whip. She answered on the second ring. Bethany? Hey, hope I'm not calling too late. Girl, I've been stalking your Instagram hoping you'd post something that isn't brunch. What's going on? I smiled, the kind of smile that only happens when someone reminds you of who you used to be. I need a gut check. You remember Harriet? Christy laughed. The sister who weaponizes charm like it's a skill endorsement on LinkedIn? Of course. We talked for an hour. About the proposal, the joke, the email, the silence. I didn't cry, but my voice cracked once, when I told her about the thank you card. That stupid thank you card. She was quiet for a beat, then said, I always wondered when you'd stop letting her narrate your life. That sentence sat in my chest like warm tea. Comforting, but heavy. I'm not trying to ruin her, I said. I know, Christy said. You're trying to reclaim you. And that was the first time in a long time I believed I was allowed to. We hung up, and I sat back down on the couch, legs tucked under me, candles still burning low. Outside, the streetlight flickered once, then settled. And in the quiet, I whispered something I hadn't said in years. I still want this. My own space. My own voice. I didn't know who I was saying it to. God. The night. Maybe just myself. But saying it out loud felt like drawing a line in the sand. Not for Harriet, for me. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday, 11 a.m. Harriet's team, the client team, and Raymond, all on one call. I wasn't on the calendar, no name, no intro, just a quiet box with my camera off and my mic muted. Raymond had asked if I wanted to be visible. I said no, he didn't press. The call started like most do, small talk, tech checks, can you see my screen? Harriet was there, polished as always, hair curled, makeup perfect, a blouse that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She smiled at everyone, joked with the client, led with confidence, and then the slides began. Her voice changed when she presented. More clipped, more performative, like she was reading lines in a play she'd memorized years ago. I watched her move through the first half, fumbling once, stammering slightly at slide 4. The one I'd rebuilt, the one she hadn't touched. Then Raymond stepped in. Before we move to next steps, he said, leaning forward, I just want to take a second to acknowledge the turnaround here. Harriet smiled, her face lighting up like it always did when praise was in the room. This version, he continued, is cleaner, sharper, purpose-driven. Honestly, it's the best strategy framework I've seen from this team in a long time. He paused, let the words hang, then added, casually, "It came from an outside consultant we brought in, someone with a great eye for cohesion and brand narrative." Harriet froze. The client blinked. Someone on her team, Joe Olson maybe, leaned in slightly, like he'd missed a beat. Raymond clicked to the final slide. At the bottom, in soft gray italics, my name appeared. Strategic Proposal Structure by Bethany Branch. I didn't breathe, not because I was nervous, but because I was listening. The silence was loud, not awkward, revealing. The kind of silence that asks everyone to rethink everything they thought they knew. Harriet laughed. Just once. Tight. "Oh, Bethany's my sister," she said, brushing hair from her shoulder like the words were caught there. "She's creative." Her voice cracked slightly on that last word. Raymond smiled, not unkindly. "I didn't know that, but I'm glad we have her on board for now." Then, shifting his gaze just off screen. "Bethany, if you're on, thanks again. Your revisions brought real clarity." I unmuted, just for a second. My voice, calm, even. "You're welcome, happy to help." Then muted again. That's all I said. No victory speech. No jab. Just a name. Spoken aloud. It's strange how something so small can feel like a door unlocking. Just those 5 words. And suddenly, I was no longer invisible. No longer the girl with the planners and the deviled eggs and the silent nods. I watched Harriet's face. Her smile didn't drop, not all the way. But it shifted. The way someone's expression shifts when they realize the story they're telling doesn't belong to them anymore. The meeting ended. The thank yous rolled in. The cameras clicked off one by one. And I sat in the quiet of my apartment, not gloating, not glowing, just grounded. Completely. Because this wasn't revenge, it was a return, to myself, to the room, to the name I had stopped saying out loud, even in my own head. Bethany Branch. No longer the shadow, just real. Harriet didn't call, not that day, not the next. She sent a text 2 days later. "Hey, saw the update on the deck. Nice work, didn't realize you were freelancing again. We should talk soon." I stared at it for a long time. No punctuation at the end, just that dangling sentence. "We should talk soon." Like nothing happened, like she hadn't turned me into a punchline in front of people who clapped when she was done. I didn't respond. Not out of anger, out of peace. Sometimes silence isn't the absence of words, it's the presence of boundaries. A week went by, then 2. Raymond emailed again, this time with a contract, consulting, flexible hours, generous pay. He wrote, "We need your eye on more than one deck. You've got clarity, and I trust your instincts." I signed it, quietly, without making a show of it. And in doing so, I stepped back into something I thought I'd lost. Not a career, but a voice. Tammy sent me a photo the next weekend. It was from a family brunch Harriet had thrown. Everyone around the table, laughing. An empty chair in the corner. "It was weird without you," she wrote. But it felt quieter too, like someone dimmed the lights. I didn't reply. Not because I was bitter, but because I'd finally stopped sitting at tables where I had to earn my seat by shrinking. I took myself to brunch that Sunday. Alone. Corner booth, fresh coffee, notebook open. And I started sketching ideas again, for my own thing this time. Not to prove a point, not to outshine her. Just to finally choose myself. Because in the end it wasn't about revenge, it was about repair. Of the version of me I left behind years ago. The girl with big dreams and purple ink and quiet power waiting to be remembered. Funny how it happens. You spend years thinking you're not enough. Then one quiet moment shows you, maybe you were just too much for the small version of your life. And the people who need you small, they'll always call your growth betrayal. But growth doesn't apologize. It doesn't wait for permission. I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped building them with my bare hands for people who'd never cross one for me. And maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've sat through dinners where your name was served as dessert, where your wins were whispered and your losses turned into punchlines. Maybe you've smiled when you wanted to scream. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been someone's silence until they needed your voice to succeed? Because if you have, then you know. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply show up as yourself, without apology, without shrinking, without asking for a seat. Because the table was never too full. They were just afraid of what would happen when you finally spoke. So if this story hit you somewhere deep, if you've ever felt invisible in a room you helped build, comment, subscribe, and tell me, what's the one thing you're no longer apologizing for? I'll be reading.